Hey, welcome to Tuesday, January 15th. After work, sort of hanging out around the house to try and get some things tidied up and do some editing. Boring day. However, I did want to stop by and not just skip today because we need to discuss season 11 of Doctor Who. I want to give my thoughts, review, whatever we want to call it, on that. So this will involve spoilers for Doctor Who Season 11, Series 11, whatever term you want to use for it. Jodie Whittaker's first as the Doctor. And so, yes, this will have spoilers. And I'm really not doing anything else, so if you don't want that, then see you tomorrow. Otherwise, carrying on. To give just some basic thoughts, this is not my favorite season. I enjoyed Whittaker as the Doctor. She did great. And I loved the companions. They were good. I thought maybe we could have done with maybe one less. Despite I did enjoy the interpersonal relationships that we had. But I think either Graham and Ryan or Yaz and Ryan would have worked really well, dropping out the other. Because as it was, it just felt crowded. My main issues with the season were the rushed pacing and the setups that had no payoff constantly. Constant setups, basically no payoff. Both of those are writing issues, so I blame Chibnall. At this point, I'm thinking it was his fault. I blame him. He did well writing characters. He wrote characters well. He wrote dialogue well. I'll give him that. Individual episodes, the only real issue was that they would felt rushed, but the overall story was just so very lacking. It's just like, what matters in the overall story? Episode 1 and 10, the rest is filler? Why did you do that? Whatever. He's no Moffat. Moffat was very good at making all these little details and then tying them all together, and everything mattered, and it all made sense, and it was great. He doesn't. He just is like, well, what's the point of telling the story? Oh, well, I just felt like telling it. But how does it affect things overall? Oh, it doesn't. How did things before affect it? They probably didn't. It's probably just on its own. Anyways, I'm going to move on and talk about individual episodes a little bit. Episode 1, The Woman Who Fell to Earth. My friend Nick said it the best. Now, for me, I didn't think about it because I knew who the companions were going to be going in. But Nick said that when he was watching it, the one person that he felt like, oh, that has to be the companion, was Grace. And when you think about it, that's right, she'd have been the best one. She's the one that it's like that. She's the one that you want to see, like, get to see everything. She would have enjoyed it so much. Oh well. I do not like the new sonic screwdriver design. It looks ugly. I get it, cool. She's creative and she built it, but it looks ugly. And we've just gone from like one of the prettiest ones to this ugly thing. Also, Tim Shaw was gross. He's a gross monster. And then we get episode 2, Ghost Monument. And we spend some time and we get to know these rival pilots. And they got their issues and they grow over the course of the episode. And it really felt like leaving it like, oh, that's a great thing to bring back. When you're in a bind later, you've made allies with these couple of pilots that were antagonists at first, but have become allies to each other, and thus allies to our fam here. Really be great when they get brought back. Never gonna happen. We get to see the new TARDIS. I like that. New TARDIS is great. The chaotic controls are back, and there's a bit of that organic feel that has returned. And I also very much enjoy, we saw the sidewalls as we entered the TARDIS instead of just the front door, and I liked that. It was cool. Episode 3 is Rosa. Very nice for a historical episode. There were definitely some painful parts to watch, but, history. Now here's the thing, though. Near the end there, Ryan comes along, and racist bad guy gets sent back in time Now, that's got to be relevant. That's got to be important. That doesn't do nothing. Overly racist bad guy is now going to affect things further in the past. Oh, this is like a butterfly effect thing, and it's going to matter. Or it would have if the writers weren't so lazy. Because that would have been like a major change to history, but doesn't seem to be. Oh well. Episode 4, Arachnids in the UK. Spiders. Ugh. I will say, Yaz had this is the one where Yaz has the cool, cute little hairstyle that she had in all the promotional imagery, so I was definitely happy with that. But otherwise, creepy spiders, political jokes, haha. But hey, at the end, the companions are, officially joining the TARDIS, so that's a little bit of, actually advancement in the story. That's, that's something. They did something. Episode 5, Saranga Conundrum. The little creature made me think of Stitch. And ultimately we made some more friends that could be brought back later if they ever intended to bring people back later. It doesn't seem they do. Episode 6, Demons of the Punjab, was, alright. They tried character development, but just too many characters to develop and not enough time for us to get invested in them very much. It did feel like if they had set up the aliens previously as the assassins and then revealed in this one that they were now observers, that would have really meant something. As it was very weak. I suppose it would be fair if this was setting up for another episode later on, which it's not. If they had set it up like these pilots or these were assassins, now observers, and then later on, now we know they're observers when we meet them, or maybe we meet them later on but aren't aware that we're in the past, and so we think they're still observers, but now we're in the past back when they were assassins, or something like that, but none of that happened. They didn't show up again. And this is the point, this episode was the point where I started to be concerned that most of the plot threads that would be of value if tied into the overall story might not be. I was still hopeful at this point, but this is the point where I started to think, well, Chibnall isn't Moffat. Maybe he's not as good of a writer for a series. He seems okay for most individual episodes, but as a series, maybe he's just not all that good. So I was starting to get it. And then we get to episode 7, Kerblam. Yeah, it's an Amazon analog, political commentary and such, but they did succeed with the time that they had in making me like Kira very quickly. She had this sense of gratitude for the smallest of things that was just so endearing. So I very much liked her. Then they killed her off. I didn't like that. It made me sad. It was a good mystery episode. As far as a mystery story, it was good. And here's why. Because they gave you the answer right at the beginning. Nobody expects the maintenance man. Maintenance man's not expected by anyone. They said that. I heard that. And you know what? I didn't listen. I did not think, well, maybe I should suspect the maintenance man. I didn't. So, overall, it's a good mystery. However, I will also point out, the delivery robot teleported onto the TARDIS. That seems like a security flaw. Also, that kind of security flaw would have been great if that was the setup and utilized later, but it wasn't. You noticing a pattern with the things that are upsetting me? But it was cool to have the Fez moment. It was a throwback that acknowledged that there were seasons before this one. And it's the first time they bothered to acknowledge, hey, we've had other seasons. There's been other Doctors. This isn't where things began. I know that none of the monsters we've seen are return. None of the issues are return. Nothing is related to anything in the past. We've been basically assuming we have a clean slate. But hey, we will now acknowledge it briefly for a joke. I did appreciate that. Episode 8, The Witchfinders. This was good, mostly, other than the ending. I loved the Doctor confronting the Old Testament with the New and getting all biblical with King James. It was a great moment when I realized, wait a minute, that's Alan Cumming, who was playing King James. He's fabulous. The big disappointment near the end, there was a point where it faded to black. And my mom even was sitting there and she said, oh, it's going to be continued. But it wasn't. It faded back in. Should have been to be continued. Instead, it came back. The ending was super rushed. Like, this is the one that, like, really had me start thinking about seeing it. I was like, oh man, this was so heavily rushed. And everything was just, so very convenient. They just weren't willing to spend the time to give things the attention they deserve. And the enemies were gross. Ew. They seem to like gross enemies. Episode 9 was It Takes You Away. And this started off great. It was cool and interesting characters, weird environments, and plot twists. And when it comes time to discover what's been going on, it's rushed by and, bedtime stories are real. Must be the problem. Solved. Ta-da! Really? You're just going to basically, how do we solve this? Oh, well, I will tell you my bedtime story from when I was a child, and we're just going to assume that's real. And it is, because that's convenient, and now the story can end in time, and we don't have to carry this on to another episode. Whew. Dodged that bullet. Also, who was Ribbons? Where did Ribbons come from? The mirror became a portal, and the anti-universe formed to push them apart. The moths were there to clear things from moving between the two, so they kind of make sense to have formed in that anti-universe. But what about Ribbons? He was sentient. Why was he created? Why did it create him? That didn't make sense to me, and of course it's never going to be explained. Never even going to come up again, is it? Near this point here, I was starting to worry. This is the point where I was really worrying, like, we're getting really near the end of the season. Are things going to tie together, or is everything pointless and non-connected? This was the point where I was like, are we not going to get an overarching story? Like nothing's going to tie this together? So this is the point where I realized we have a bad showrunner. And maybe he'll do better next time. Maybe next season is going to be all tying into all this stuff and it will all be relevant and all worth it. Maybe. But then we get to season 10, the season finale. But I did decide I was going to also count the special as part of this, just to help improve my impressions overall. And when we get there, it will, mostly. But this was, this episode 10, the Battle of Ranskor of Kolos. It was good. It was a good episode. It did need more time, but you know what it did? It brought back an enemy. Tim Shaw came back. And of course, he was the one that definitely made most sense because he tied into the death of Grace. And so that does mean the overarching story does involve episodes 1 and 10. Still, there's so many loose ends and things that you didn't even try to tie in. It was lazy writing. But this, for season finale, was good. The stakes were high. They succeeded at giving it high stakes. Now, there was a pronoun game with Object that was stupid and needless. They could have called it the Stasis Crystal, and we, the audience, still wouldn't know what was in stasis. Calling it Object felt like the characters who did know were only playing the pronoun game because they knew there was an audience to the show, not because in the world their characters would have done so. They used the term object to mess with the audience. They could have come up with a name for the object that didn't tell you what it was, that could have kept it from just being a pronoun game, for the sake of being a pronoun game. Again, lazy writing. But again, stakes were high, but the solution was like any other, nothing special. Good cliffhanger, could have worked wonders, but That would have required a 2-part episode, and that wasn't going to happen. But hey, the whole Earth was at stake, so there was that. And then we get our special. Not a Christmas special, because Chibnall wants to be different. It's a New Year's special. Resolution. Alright. But you know what there's in this? Daleks. It felt like real Doctor Who for once. It's the Doctor against an enemy of Doctor Who clashing together. It was good. That was great. And it was a good Dalek story. One lonely Dalek that still felt like a real threat. It took you back to like when Rose met the Dalek at first. Just that single Dalek, and yeah, so very good. Now, it also harkened back to the first episode of the season when the Doctor built her own Sonic. The Dalek built its own armor. Oh, that was cool. Very cool. And there was a point where it could have been split. When you find out the Dalek has its armor back and it bursts out of the barn. That was a great shot for To Be Continued. But it didn't feel too rushed after that. It wasn't too bad. The realization from it's made of metal to use the microwave was a bit rushed, a bit quick. Didn't feel like enough thought was needed to get between the two. But they did at least seem like they were trying to set that up by having him carry around the giant microwave box the whole time and making it like really obvious, so they were trying. The extended fam was nice, and it's very clear that this Doctor just welcomes everyone aboard. Anyone welcome on the TARDIS. Just come on, join in. The couple getting together after New Year's Eve was cute. It was a good method of just making you care for them quickly. I liked that Ryan stood up for himself to his dad. That was nice. And I liked that they got to develop their relationship a bit. Because at least his dad was a character that, while we haven't seen, there have been mentions of him. That's been relevant. So that was a good one to bring in. The melted down Earth-made Dalek was kind of cool. And the redesigned Dalek squid looked cool. I liked that. I'm of course, I give them permission. Yeah, redesign some things. New showrunner. That's good. Have fun with it. Enjoy the toy box. You have entered Doctor Who. It is a toy box full of all these toys. Enjoy it. It's the first time he's bothered to play with any of the toys. He's been like, I just want to make my own toys. I don't want to use any of the existing... really? Whatever. Yaz felt like she was just tagging along in this episode, which is sad. Because she's, like, my favorite. She's kind and adventurous, and so I really like her character, but in this episode, she felt like she was just there. But that happens a bit, because there are too many companions, and this one added even more, temporary companions, and so, yeah, of the main three, she is the one that kind of felt like she got left out, because she wasn't tied to Ryan's father's story. The location, establishment, graphics, and sounds were very cool. That was nice. Now, the story could have involved the other Guardians. They've spent generations upon generations standing in these terrible environments, just watching over something that they've been told is buried here. And I mean, since the 9th century? I mean, at some point someone had to have said, hey, I don't think it's coming back. I think we're good now, right? I mean, their story of the two that actually something happens while on their watch, because nothing's happened on anyone else's watch for generation upon generation. So that would have been an interesting story to look at, but would have needed more time. But at the very least, this episode felt like Doctor Who. This was a very Doctor Who episode of Doctor Who, which for this season is an accomplishment. Very good, Chibnall. You managed to make at least one of your episodes feel like Doctor Who. Overall, the people in the stories are kind and good-hearted. I do like the characters. It's just the story development and the fact that things don't tie together like they're supposed to. I don't need him to be Moffat. I don't need that. I like that. I would like that. That'd be my preference. To actually tie everything together. But even if we just got things like, right, Davis did with Bad Wolf. Just that recurring bit. And the fact that it felt at the end like at the very least something from the whole season tied into the end. Now, it wasn't as big as the kind of things that Moffat tied together, but it was something. We didn't even get that. And we had some things that like had to be relevant later that just weren't. The fact that the whole, like, that Ryan disobeyed orders and sent the guy back in time and he was, like, racist villain, like, comically villainous kind of guy, like, villain for the sake of being villainous, and he's sent back in time to affect the past. How is that not going to make a big deal? How? Anyways, so yeah, wasn't my favorite season, but we got what we got, and I'm hopeful that it will get better. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Of course, if you have thoughts or opinions, I welcome them in the comments. Feel free to let me know your thoughts. Maybe you're one of the many people that thought Moffat was doing a terrible job, and you're so glad he's gone, and you love I'm not saying I'm going to agree with you, but feel free to explain your position on that, because I loved Moffat's storytelling. It was great. Things were tied together. It was cool. I like to think. I like when things make me think, and things make me think back to, oh, this ties into that, and this ties into that. That's great storytelling for me. Maybe that's not what you like. Maybe this was a preference for some reason. Let me know why. But visually, it was beautiful. Characters were mostly good. Visually beautiful, other than that sonic screwdriver that seems deliberately ugly. I'll just end on that. Ugly sonic screwdriver. Pretty TARDIS. Ugly screwdriver. Anyways, join me as my journey continues. Bye.